And we are ready to roll.
Great.
Here we go.
Welcome aboard the Daily Tech News Show. Please keep your earbuds in at all times. If, throughout the show, you feel the need to contribute, go to patreon.com/acedetect. Now, please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, March 23rd, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Adam Christianson, host of the MacCast, back on the show. Welcome back, Adam. How's it going, brother?
Going good. Going good. I had a little bit of cold earlier in the week or last week, and it's all gone now, or most.
It is banished now?
Yeah. It was a quick one. That's always
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some Apple news to talk about. We're gonna talk a little bit about the new unauthorized Steve Jobs biography that's coming out tomorrow, and why it's getting supported, even though it's unauthorized, so well by Apple, which is very un-Apple-like. There's lots to talk about there.
Yes.
Let's start off with the headlines. Google Glass not so dead. The Verge passes along Google Executive Chairman Eric Schmidt's comments to the Wall Street Journal. Schmidt said, "We ended the Explorer program, and the press conflated this into us canceling the whole project, which isn't true." He also said that's why they gave it to Nest Tony Fadell, so it could become more user-friendly. And he said Glass is a long-term project that's, quote, like saying the self-driving car is a disappointment because it's not driving me around now.
Yep.
This really bugged me. We were talking before the show. This really bugged me when everyone said Glass is canceled, and I'm like, it does not look canceled. You could say it's not been very successful. You can say they're shifting gears, but I don't think Glass is dead, and that's what Eric Schmidt came out and said in this interview.
Yeah, I mean, it was called the Explorer program for a reason. There's a lot you can defer from that word explorer, right? This is like, you know, Columbus going to America and then, all right, we're done. We're never going back. Forget that, right?
Right. Exactly. Like, that continent's done. We're over that. My theory on this, and just things that I've gleaned, and I should disclose my wife works for Google, but she has no connection to any of these programs, and I'm not using any inside information when I say this. From the public reports, it seems like marketing, and there's been Google executives say this in public, marketing was really the problem. They marketed it wrong. I think the marketing and PR people that talked to the tech press were sort of maybe under their breath or off the record saying, yeah, this thing is so dead. Like it just didn't work because the marketing didn't work. And maybe that brought the meme all out there that, oh, it's dead now. They've moved it out of the X Labs. What do you think?
I mean, marketing was there. I don't know that. I mean, was really the intent to make this immediately a product, or was this more, let's get it in the hands of some people, let's do some R&D with this stuff, get some public feedback, figure out some of the social issues that we might run into, some of the technical issues we might run into, and then it just seems like it's a really early stage product that they made public beta, which, Google likes to do a lot.
But and that's where the marketing failure may have occurred, and what they've said is that we didn't make it clear that this was really just a test project, and it made it feel they sort of marketed it more as if it were a finished product,
like it was going to be a thing. Yeah, that's true.
And it didn't meet expectations.
Yeah.
TechCrunch reports on the launch of a new standalone app from Instagram called Layout. It's a collage app that lets you take up to 9 photos and arrange them and apply filters. It can do things like pick out just the photo with faces, or do a mirrored image like it's in water, take a series of photos instantly, make a collage from them like a photo booth, and it generally speeds up the creation of these sorts of things. Finished collages can be saved to the device, shared to Facebook and Instagram, or sent through the OS's sharing option to other apps. Layout from Instagram is free. So when you search for Layout in the App Store and you find the $1.99 thing that's not from Instagram, don't buy that if you want the free one. It's called Layout from Instagram, available for iOS now and coming to Android within months, they say. When I first read this, I'm thinking collages, like, because I'm old, right? I'm thinking like clipping things out of magazines. But this is just those, when you have a grid of 3 or 4 pictures, some of them different sized. That's kind of a thing that people really enjoy doing these days.
Yeah, it's something, this sort of ganging of photos on Instagram. I'm not a huge Instagrammer, but I've noticed a lot more people, probably a lot younger than me, doing that sort of thing. And I think it's a great way to show multiple images. And I guess they wanted to get in on the game. I'm not sure what the end game is of doing your own app versus just relying on the other. It's like it's more control. This is sort of like Twitter. Wanted to make sure people are using their app and not all these other apps, I guess.
Yeah, they're hoping to bind people to Instagram more by making a better version of the app. Is probably another thing.
Yeah, it looked pretty nice. I'll probably check it out. About the only thing that I thought, and this is the naming. There's this new trend in naming apps, and Apple sort of started it to a certain degree, to things that are completely unsearchable, like Pages. Like if you need help with Pages, good luck to you searching Google.
Forget SEO. Let's just name it the most generic name possible, which is good when you're not trying to search. Well, the App Store search is not very good to begin with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it just throws in more problems. So I'm glad you pointed out that there is another app that is going to come up that you have to pay for.
Well, because I'd made the rookie mistake of looking in the App Store for layout from Instagram, and I didn't get any of the results. I had to actually go to Instagram's Tumblr to get the link.
Yeah.
Usually after the app has been out for a couple of days, it has a better search result.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure it'll get featured pretty quickly.
Yeah. TechCrunch reports Microsoft broadened its agreement with Samsung to pre-install software and announced 11 similar agreements with other manufacturers like Dell. The new Samsung agreement will see Office apps installed on Samsung Android tablets starting in the first half of 2015. It strikes me, Adam, that what Microsoft is up to here is actually very similar to what they did with Windows. Because in the early days, it was everything runs DOS, but everybody's trying different windowing apps. So let's get our windowing layer on most machines, which eventually became the operating system. Here they're saying, yeah, everybody uses Android, iOS, but let's get our suite of apps on there. Do you think of these as bloatware, though? Or do you think of these as cool, free Microsoft apps on my tablet?
That's interesting. As half as an Apple owner, I've got to say, I think it's the latter, right? Because Apple does this with their own apps, right? Let's get iWork and all those things on there. I really think this is just a classic play because Office is on tablets and things is basically freemium at this point, right? For free, you get some free editing stuff, but if you want advanced features, you got to pay up and get into the Microsoft 365. So, it's really a marketing move. I think it's the same old stuff that they did with Internet Explorer and things like that. They want to get this on as many devices because they have more opportunity to market and upsell people on the 365 service, which I actually like. I like these apps a lot. I don't know what took Microsoft so long, especially in bringing them on the iOS side. So if they can work with companies like Samsung and get stuff pre-installed, that just means more Office users for them.
It does seem to be working for them, too. The Office use has skyrocketed since they started this. Recode reports that Cyanogen received $80 million in funding. Investors include Twitter, Qualcomm, Telefonica, and Rupert Murdoch. Cyanogen has come a long way from its open source project roots. They are offering a commercial version for phone makers that includes services from partners. They basically said, we want to be a fully competitive mobile OS. So getting $80 million is certainly going to help them along that road.
Yeah.
Nintendo President Satoru Iwata told Time magazine that the Wall Street Journal story that had been going around last week reporting a Zelda show being developed for Netflix was not based on correct information. So you're saying there's a chance, Satoru? Not based. That's not a no. Anyway, as of now, he also says, I have nothing new to share with you in regard to the use of our intellectual properties for any TV shows or films. So he's pouring some cold water on there, but it's not a flat denial.
Yeah, if Nintendo was smart, then I'd be excited about this, but they've not historically in the last few years shown that they're really, we had the story recently too about them, bringing but not really bringing their properties to tablets, right?
Right. Well, so they've hired DNA Games to bring their characters to tablets and phones, but not ports of the games. I actually don't have a problem with that because bringing direct ports, having played all the Atari 2600 games on my phone, doesn't always work very well because they're not designed for a touchscreen. So I'm withholding judgment till I see what they come out with because it may actually be better.
Well, but they have an opportunity to also not just port those titles, but those are the titles people really want to play. If you look at all the people trying to sneak in, like ROM things that you can play those games on tablets. There's a huge pent-up demand, and so if they could take those titles and optimize them and tweak them for that, I think that's a really good business opportunity. And same thing with, licensing the content for TV shows and movies. That could be a huge windfall of money for a company that has been struggling.
My feel on this is that when the Wall Street Journal reported this, that they were in fact in talks with Netflix about developing a show, and then since then, the talks have not gone so well, and so Mr. Iwata felt like, let's pour some.
They should work hard to make it happen, because I think that would be huge.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah. The next web notice, Microsoft released tools and sample code for developers who want to make universal apps for Windows 10. If you want to build an app that works across desktop, tablet, and mobile versions of Windows with one code base, here's what you need to do. Download Visual Studio 2015 CTP6 and the SDK tools for Windows 10 through the Windows Insider program, of which you have to be a member. And you can find out more about that at insider.windows.com. Let's take a look at some news from you. These come from our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com, as do most of the stories get submitted there. And so sometimes I feel like I need to remind people, like, hey, if you submit a story that isn't called out in the news from you section, but is in the main section, you succeeded, because that helps me know, okay, yeah, there's another set of people saying, yeah, I'm really interested in that particular story. So submit them all. Vote on them all, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. But we always like to highlight some of the ones that maybe aren't getting picked up at the other aggregators out there. starfuryzeta sent us the Engadget report that packing peanuts, the things in your hair and on the floor and stuck to the cat after you open a box, may be the key to a new generation of lithium-ion batteries. Purdue University researchers developed a process that heats the peanuts and turns them into carbon sheets or carbon nanoparticles, depending on the composition of the original peanut, that can then be used as anodes where lithium ions are stored during charging. Early test samples last for 300 charging cycles without losing capacity. Now, they'd like to get that number higher to make it more widely useful. But unlike most battery advances, this one is already practical, it's cheap, and it's easy to implement.
Yeah. It almost sounded. I was reading through the story and I'm like, oh, could I do this for my kid's science fair project? Like,
that's interesting. Like, could you
have to superheat them? I think though. So maybe you got a kiln or something. I don't know.
There's a special piece of equipment they showed in the video that's probably not cheap. But I wonder if you had access to a kiln or something, you could. It would be cool just to make the carbon, the carbon nanoparticles or the sheet. If you could just make a carbon sheet.
Yeah, the only thing that wasn't clear was can you use both types of peanuts? Because you have the polystyrene ones, which I imagine are the ones that are really good for this application, versus the cornstarch ones.
Yeah, they mentioned the polystyrene ones in particular, and I don't know if the cornstarch ones do this or not.
I think later they said about 50% of the packing peanuts could be recycled using this technology, so it's probably accounting for those polystyrene ones.
There you go.
Great.
Doors Rio sent us this next one, the next web story about Boeing receiving a patent for a force field, a real honest-to-goodness force field. In fact, Patent Yogi, a patent service company, created a short video explaining it. The patent specifically covers a system to attenuate shockwave blast energy traveling through the air from affecting an object. So the way it works, sensors detect the initial blast and the direction, and then fire lasers that ionize the air between the object and the blast, creating a plasma channel or bubble of superheated air that causes the blast wave to be redirected or even reflected or just absorbed by the plasma channel, but it doesn't affect the target. It can be built around a moving vehicle. It can be built around a building. It doesn't stop the shrapnel from coming in, so it's not a pure force field, but it does keep the shock wave from damaging the object for the most part, at least reducing it.
It's cool. That's really cool. I'm guessing scalability is the challenge there.
Yeah, this is definitely a military. This Boeing's going to be selling this to militaries. This is not something you're going to pick up down at the hardware store.
No, but I meant more like I'm guessing that as it stands now, the technology is you probably have to have a pretty big piece of equipment to ionize that air and it's usually a problem getting it down to a platform or a package that you can actually strap on a vehicle or something like that.
If you've got one of those big heavyweight transport vehicles, it might be worth it, or maybe a tank.
Yeah. I don't know. That's the only thing in the story. They didn't really talk about, where is the technology now? What does the thing look like that generates this plasma field? What size is it? Is it a toaster? Is it the same size as a car? I don't know.
Roger's texting me. He researched this for us. It's designed for a Humvee-sized vehicle, according to the patent pictures.
Cool.
So, see if that actually works in practice. But dmmacs passed along the news that a software update later this week will allow Fitbit wearers to use multiple devices. That would be multiple devices on the same account. That's good news for Fitbit, who would like to sell you more devices if you already own one of them. Good news for users who want to swap between the fitness-centric Fitbit Surge and the lightweight Fitbit Flex as well. The update will also add features for tracking bike rides. Do you use any of these fitness trackers, Adam?
I had a Fitbit, and right now I have a Pebble, which I'm using with the Misfit app. A lot of people don't know they have a little app that goes on the Pebble that does like step tracking and stuff like that, and then syncs with the app. So that was all free. So I decided to go that route, and that kind of got rid of my little Fitbit. I just had the little tiny one, that you strapped on, and of course, being an Apple guy, we're a month away from the Apple Watch, so they're all going away when I get my watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably try the Apple Watch. We'll see. I am not the kind of person who even wears a Fitbit, or I've ever worn a Fitbit or anything like that. I just use my phone to do my tracking. So
yep, that works too.
Yeah, I'm fairly skeptical of these things. So. We'll see. And I can't imagine, although I 100% assume that there are plenty of people who would want to own two, one for work and one for home, But
yeah, I get maybe I couldn't. That's what I couldn't figure out with that story is how many people are going to want 2 or 3 of these things. But I don't know.
metalfreak submitted the Ars Technica article that shows multiple security warnings bore you. You're not. It's science now. Researchers will present a paper to that effect next month at the Association for Computing Machinery's CHI 2015 conference. There's a couple papers coming out of this research, actually. MRI images show a precipitous drop in visual processing after even one repeated exposure to a standard security warning, and a large overall drop after 13 of them. The researcher team, made up of 6 scientists from Brigham Young University, the University of Pittsburgh, and Google, propose polymorphic warnings. So in other words, the warnings would change their color, their text, their shapes, other characteristics to combat the habituation that you get from seeing the same thing over and over again.
Great.
No, see, now I thought that sounded like a good idea. Like, yeah, you know what? I find myself forgetting to like forcing myself, like, you need to read this because it could be important. So the idea of having it look different every time seems like a good idea. You sound like maybe you're not seeing it as such a good idea.
I don't like being tricked into doing things. I like to think that I'm smart enough and I can educate myself that, yeah, I probably want to just read these things and know what they are before I click on them. But I get it. I mean, it makes sense. But at the same time, I think we're being constantly over bombarded as well with a lot of these messages. So there's a little bit of balance that needs to go on as well. I don't know. I think anything that you're repeatedly hit over the head with is going to bore you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is important research to say, hey, let's start testing what will get people to pay attention to security warnings. I think you're absolutely right, and I doubt the scientists would disagree with you that another part of reducing habituation is making sure that the alerts are actually necessary and not just random. Because that's the other thing is, and maybe that's part of this, is your security alert often looks like the same thing as some kind of pop-up that's not a security alert and not essential.
Yeah. It'd be nice if those things were different. The latest one that's really bugging me with my iOS devices is just everything now. Every app has to ask for every bit of permission, and it just gets really, really old. But I mean, it's important. I get it. People want privacy. You want to know when an app is using your location and wants to access your camera and your contacts. But now that it's every app has to ask 3 times, 4 times, for this permission and that permission, it does kind of get, grating and boring.
There has to be a better way.
Yeah.
But I think this is interesting. If they're like, look, just make a system so that they're not looking the same every time, and you'll just naturally want to read them more, which is good. And that's a look at the headlines. All right, Becoming Steve Jobs. We mentioned it before on the show. Subtitled "The Evolution of a Reckless Upstart into a Revolutionary Leader" is coming from Brent Schlender, who's a technology reporter who got to know Steve Jobs very well through the course of his life, and Rick Tetzelli, who is Fast Company editor. This is an unauthorized biography. Remember, Walter Isaacson's biography was authorized. Steve Jobs cooperated with him, gave him lots of access. Isaacson was able to interview a lot of people that Steve Jobs worked with, friends and coworkers. But the tune has changed around Isaacson's book over the years, and the tune has also changed over Schlender and Tetzelli's book. Apple refused interviews with them as recently as 2012, but 18 months later changed their mind. Now they've got interviews with Tim Cook, Johnny Ive, Eddie Q, Ed Catmull, John Lasseter, Laureen Powell-Jobs, Robert Iger. Now some of those aren't Apple employees, obviously, but the access has rocketed up. Meanwhile, Tetzelli says Apple was not allowed to have any editorial input whatsoever. They were given a copy of the book before publishing, but they didn't seek any feedback from them. And everybody's talking. That's the thing, Adam, that's really not confusing me, but fascinating me, is that you've got an Apple spokesman, Steve Dowling, saying to the New York Times, "After a long period of reflection following Steve's death, we felt a sense of responsibility to say more about the Steve we knew. We decided to participate in Brent and Rick's book because of Brent's long relationship with Steve, which gave him a unique perspective on Steve's life. The book captures Steve better than anything else we've seen, and we are happy we decided to participate." Eddie Q's tweeting about it. Tim Cook talks about the Isaacson book in this new book and says he thought it did a tremendous disservice to Steve Jobs. Where do you think all this is coming from?
It's funny. I work with the guys over at the Mac Observer, and we were talking about this in our morning meeting this morning. Because I think you brought up a really good point. The Isaacson book is the one that is authorized. It's the one that Steve Jobs, said, "Here is the story I want to tell." And of course, he interviewed other people in that book as well. A lot of the same people that are on this list. And with this new book, I think that book came out, and it doesn't portray Steve in always the best light. But I think Steve, what he was going for was a balanced light. I haven't seen this new book yet. It comes out tomorrow. I'm certainly going to read it. My guess is that it's much more positive about Steve Jobs and his managerial style and how he interacted with these guys. And I think that's, I think they looked at the other book and went, this is going to look like we were working for a jerk. And I think there's even a quote from Cook, saying, I wouldn't work with somebody like that, and that's not the Steve that I knew. Well, I also think about my own experiences with people, and you have these interactions at work, and maybe you know them on a certain level. Knew Steve a lot more intimately than some, but you want the person that you look up to and respect to be, especially in death, viewed in really good light. So I think they're looking for a more positive, upbeat story, and they're excited about this one. Now, when you start getting into, which one's the honest portrayal and which one's not the honest portrayal, there's a lot of subjectivity that goes in there, I think.
Well, yeah. And that's what's so interesting is that, let's redirect you back to the fact that this isn't a Kitty Kelly 1980s era hit biography. Walter Isaacson did a biography that was supported by Steve Jobs when he was alive. So it doesn't seem like the kind of book that would have caused that amount of controversy. And it does seem like the reaction was somewhat delayed, no?
Right. The reaction
by Tim Cook and Eddie Q. It's, 18 months ago, they're saying, no, we won't give you any interviews. And then suddenly they're not only giving interviews, but Eddie Q's tweeting that this is the best portrayal that we've ever seen.
Well, it's the best portrayal from Eddie Q's perspective, I think. I think maybe the turnaround came about because the Isaacson book came out and they read it. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting because Johnny Ive made some comments about it and then also said, I didn't read the whole Isaacson book, which I found very interesting.
Right. So, of the parts that I read, I didn't like them very much.
I didn't like them very much. So, but again, I think this is somebody that they worked with very intimately for years and years and years, and I think probably the Isaacson book didn't share the stories and the feelings and the messages that they wanted to share. And when they realized, oh, this stuff isn't in there, the Steve Jobs that I thought I knew or believe I knew is not portrayed how I want, then I think they opened up and said, yeah, let's talk to these guys and let's tell our perspective. But as far as if you want to say which is a more honest portrayal, I would argue that the Isaacson one probably is, because this message is coming directly from Steve Jobs. And Steve, he didn't take any editorial control over it. He even insisted that he didn't have any editorial control over it because he wanted it to be as balanced as possible. So I think that one's probably, but again, I got to wait to read this new one and see what I think. But yeah, I think it's just a classic case of here's the story we want to tell, and here's our voice, and of course they're going to like it better.
I think the other thing that probably didn't sink in until later was that the Isaacson book comes from a very traditional essayist kind of writing. And that is no disrespect to that kind of writing or to Walter Isaacson. He did a great job at it. But it's not very technology savvy. In fact, there's there's a little subculture of pointing out technical errors in the book.
We talked about this as well. Isaacson isn't the best writer in the world, but he is a darn good biographer. I mean, he's done a lot of this type of writing, and he knows how to write it. So.
Yeah, I think there's a little tech prejudice, and not a tech press prejudice necessarily, but I think some of these folks realized, wait a minute, if we let a tech beat reporter with decades of experience and the executive editor of Fast Company do this, they're going to have a more accurate, from the technology industry, from the technology worker point of view, and maybe that's part of why they like this, is that, and I'm trying to put my finger on it, but a jerk in a given setting is not a jerk if you understand the setting as much, right? And so Isaacson, as a total outsider, can come in and say, well, Steve Jobs did that, and wow, doesn't that seem harsh? But that's who the man was. Whereas inside, the engineers may say, yeah, but all of us did that. That's the way all of us work with each other. That is just the nomenclature that we have. And in fact, a little side note that just occurred to me, that could be one of the problems with hiring women into engineering, is that kind of not abusive, but that kind of harsh culture. Out of context makes him look a lot worse than he was. And maybe that's what these folks are saying, Tim Cook, Eddie Q, Johnny Ive, is, come on, you need somebody who understands how this industry works to note what was actually notable about a person versus what was typical of all the people who work in that industry.
Yeah. I mean, and I think something that sort of backs that up as well is there's a lot of people you'll hear who are former Apple employees who say it was the horrible place to work, but it was the best experience of my life, right? It's like, yeah, there was a lot of this pushing and grinding, and it was terrible, and I had late hours, and I got berated, but I also produced the best work of my life. These were great people that I worked with, so there's this sort of dichotomy around the Apple culture. I also think Tim and these guys, they're still in at Apple. They've got to preserve the culture and the image of Apple to a certain degree as well, and they want to make sure that that's portrayed in the best light.
Yeah, there is a bit of a subtext in a lot of these responses from Apple employees of, no, Steve Jobs set up a culture that didn't require Steve Jobs. Apparently, Tim Cook talks about the Fab Four theory that Steve had, that you need to have people with checks and balances. And I think there is a little self-interest in the company there in pushing that metaphor forward a little more as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another great book. I mean, there's tons of books about Apple that are all really good. If you want to get really technical and geeky, try Woz's book, which is awesome, iWoz. But I think it adds balance. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not going to say necessarily that one is better than the other. And that's the only thing that's bothering me about the stories leading up to this, is everybody saying, well, this is the definitive book on Steve Jobs. And I don't know that they can say that, especially considering that the other one was authorized, and this one is.
And at the time, everyone thought that was the definitive book about Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
And the fact is, everybody's going to have a different perspective on any topic, much less someone as complex and divisive as Steve Jobs. But I think the upshot of this is that, love him or hate him, he is still a fascinating person who worked in fascinating companies that we still are trying to understand so that we can take the good things out of them, both the man and the companies.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot of good in this one. So if you're looking for the good elements of that, life, it sounds like this is going to be a book for you. I like to read it all to kind of get the full full perspective. And it's all at the end of the day, it's all storytelling. Everybody's memories, even Steve's own. Think about your own memories of your own experiences and how they change over years, and you choose to remember parts and not remember parts, and so.
Yeah, if you've ever, I don't know if you have brothers or sisters, but I've had conversations with my sister where we talk about certain things that happened in our past, and we both remember them entirely differently.
Yep.
Or entirely different parts of them. So, yeah. Let's get our pick of the day. Jeremy Rand, thank you for sending in michaelgeist.ca. He says, I have a pick for fellow Canadians who maybe have heard many stories about the FCC's Title II adventures, but are looking for a more local perspective. Michael Geist at michaelgeist.ca is a professor of law at the University of Ottawa who writes regularly about the CRTC, the best equivalent to the FCC in Canada. He writes about privacy, media issues, digital rights, and more. I've been a subscriber to his RSS feed for years, and his articles are always insightful and timely. In my opinion, Michael Geist is the preeminent Canadian voice on technology and policy issues in the 21st century. And Jeremy, I'd say he's one of the preeminent voices in the world on this sort of thing. Do you read Michael Geist much, Adam?
No, but I will now.
Yeah, he's definitely worth, especially on these issues of policy. And sometimes they are Canadian-specific, the things that he writes about, but he's very good at drawing out the parallels and the sort of wider issues so that you can learn something even from those local issues. But he talks a lot about FCC situations and situations in Europe and other parts of the world as well. Thank you, Jeremy, for that pick. Send your picks to feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com, and you can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. Then we have Joe, formerly from lovely Cleveland, who says, in response to Friday's show where HBO, Showtime, and others were wanting to put servers into an ISP's data center, as a person who has done such a task with third-party payment gateways on major card providers' networks and third-party services on major banking networks, it is very cost prohibitive. To do this, you would have to set up a termination point for the main feed to connect to a lease line that terminates at the data center in question. The trunk of the lease line at the data center will still need to be connected into a dedicated switch within the data center. The servers will have to connect up to that switch. This all will have to be done twice, primary/backup or hot fail over some type of forced failover load balancing. Say all this was accomplished, then you have to have server support, patching, emergency access, upgrade cycles, and more. There's a lot more detail that I could bore you with, but you get the idea. Putting a server into another company's data center is glossed over as an easy, inexpensive task. If it was, then all the banks and financial institutions I've worked for must have been doing something wrong. Akamai, F5, and the like have a business model that capitalizes on the connectivity, complexities, and costs. It will be cheaper, more efficient to use them than do it yourself. Most Tier 3 and Tier 4 data centers already have access to these services built in. By the way, if they want to do this, I'm always looking for work. That's Joe, once again, formerly from lovely Cleveland. Thank you, Joe. I can tell Joe knows what he's talking about, and I bet there's someone out there that wants to fight him about this issue. Right. But the point is well taken that when a company says, and Netflix is the worst at this, apparently, from what I've been told, we just want to put a server in your network. We want to save you money. And the ISP say, no, that's going to cost us money. It isn't, nothing is as simple as it sounds.
No, never is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Adam Christianson, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Maccast.com, folks. MACCAST.com is the place to go. And, of course, you can follow Adam on Twitter, twitter.com/Maccast. Just had an episode. You put your episodes out like near the end of the week? Is that right?
Toward the end of the week, yeah. They're supposed to come out on or around Sunday. I'm probably one of the few that doesn't have quite a schedule, but for a month is what you can expect in some sort of time frame. So,
anything coming up to let folks know?
No, I mean just always the Mac news. We've got the Apple Watch is coming out, here in when we get to try them on a couple weeks here. So I'm going to be lots of coverage on that. A few other things that I'm doing. I should mention I do an iOS show called the iOS Show. You can find it at theiOSshow.com. That's more iOS focused. That is every week, and then on Fridays I'm on the British Tech Network. Mac show, and
on the Mac show,
live. I'm up at 7 a.m. Pacific, so what's that work out to 10 a.m. Eastern, and we broadcast live, and there's video streaming and all that stuff, so you can check those out as well.
Yeah, I try to get on the Mac show when I can, but it is really early. And I used to be on the big show too.
Well, it's 8
once a
o'clock
month.
right now because they haven't done the whole time change thing yet, but it'll go back to
Oh, I
7.
know. And then you got that weird time when we are offset on the daylight saving. It's
Yep.
crazy. But yeah, go check out British Tech Network as well. A whole network full of great shows there. Thanks for reminding me, Ad. And check out maccast.com as well. April 10th is when the Apple Watch pre-orders start, so you want to check that out. Thanks to our patrons, 4,888. Nice, crazy eights of patrons right now, willing to help out the show at patreon.com/acedetect. It's a value for value model. If you, my friends, are getting something out of this show and you enjoy it and you're willing to give, like $1 a month back and you can afford that, go to patreon.com/acedetect. We appreciate the support. And there's all kinds of ways to support the show at dailytechnewsshow.com/support. Only 3 tickets last time I looked, right before we started the show, for the Buzz Out Loud 10-year anniversary on March 29th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. That will be at the Hack 5 warehouse. If you can't make it live, though, listen in on Alpha Geek Radio, and we'll be streaming it at diamondclub.tv as well. So check it out. Thanks, everybody. bit.ly/B O L reunion. If you want to find out more about that. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 512-593-2459. Listen to the show live at tunein.alphageekradio.com and visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll be back with Patrick Beja tomorrow. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
And Biocast says there is only 1 ticket left, so there you go. Well, awesome, man. That was a great show. Thank you for doing that.
I appreciate it. Like I said, as always, anytime you need me, I'm here. That's what I do.
Likewise. Find me in my
How's it
basement.
going? It's going good.
It's
for you,
going
I would
well.
imagine.
Yeah. Everything is kind of up and running now. It's been all going for about a year, so it's starting to feel like maybe this will continue.
Enjoying LA too?
Yeah, actually, my neighborhood I love. There's definitely people I miss in San Francisco, and certain things about San Francisco I miss. But I wasn't from there to begin with, so it's kind of fun to get to know a new region. And I've been here long enough. I'm definitely feeling like this is where I live now.
I've definitely converted to Southern California. I grew up in just the east of the Bay Area in Walnut Creek. So
okay, yeah, I love Walnut
did grow
Creek
up there.
actually.
Yeah, but it's very different if you've been any time in the past 25 years. It's very different than where I grew up.
Walnut Creek changed from when I moved in '99 until I moved away 3 years ago, and I can't imagine what it was like when you were growing up there. It must have been
in
entirely
the early
different.
'80s. There was nothing going on.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. And we rode our bikes down to the arcade at the movie theater, and that was about it.
That was it. I could tell. I get that feeling because when I first would go to that little downtown area with the Macy's and all of that, everybody's like, "Oh, this is all so new and cool." And I'm like, "Okay, so this is not the way it used to be."
No, there was nothing there. That was all built up. Yeah. They had the little sleepy Main Street, and that was it. I think one of my parents moved there in 1972. I want to say my memory is there wasn't even on the map really. Like you'd pull out the big paper maps like we had back in the day. And it just wasn't even
listed. Yeah. We were the county seat in Greenville, Illinois, where I grew up, so we were on the map, but I don't know that we would have been on a lot of maps. We weren't on all the maps, put it that way.
So anyway, I like Southern California. Grown accustomed to it. I like the weather.
Yeah, I can't complain about the weather, and I don't have to use the freeways, so that's one of the big negatives that I just don't have to. I'm lucky enough so far, knock on wood.
Having this kind of job, it's actually one of the job dilemmas, I think, because I can't deal with I have to go out for speaking things and stuff like that. I get really angry. My road rage tolerance is like that. It's like 0 to I'm really angry now, really fast.
Yeah, I kind of make myself try to go drive out,
me too.
Regularly, just so I don't lose my edge.
Your
But
edge.
also driving here has made me a better driver because you kind of have to be.
A better driver or just good at driving?
It makes me think I'm a better driver.
More aggressive.
It's like being drunk. You just think you're better. But,
There's definitely a lot more jerks that will blow by you at 90, and at least on the major arterial freeways that I've
I don't
noticed.
know. I feel like people in LA are in general more polite to each other on the highways than other places because I think that just they've learned to be. But there are also more incidences of what you're talking about, Roger, that just happen. But I feel like those are the outliers.
I don't know. I've experienced at least 5 or 6 every time I'm down there driving. And typically it's not. I'm going from like either the Inland Empire back out toward toward LA or Santa Monica, or back to the. But just I don't know. I just want a larger car.
The Bay Area really isn't any better these days for traffic.
No,
the traffic is pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
And the 101 still aggravates me because there's 5 people doing 5 different speeds.
Yeah.
Across 4 lanes.
Well, you have the North Bay drives slow and the South Bay drives really fast, and then they all meet in San Francisco and drive every speed possible.
I blame all the transplants and recent residents to the city.
Yeah, just to blame me.
No, I've seen like an increase in the number of just really bad driving. People who don't use not just turn signals, but don't even turn their head when they try to cross lanes.
I'm still floating the idea that we needed to get all the podcasters together and just find an area and just build a giant commune and sing Kumbaya and be happy.
The state of podcasting.
Yeah,
Podcastia.
we'll make a state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could maybe subdivide one of the larger states. Aren't they allowed? Isn't Alaska and Texas allowed to just kind of turn into multiple states?
Yeah, I don't know, but then we could have our own like state senate, and we could pass all. We could get all kinds of great cheap bandwidth. We'd be a powerhouse.
By the way, for titles at showbot.tv, I went straight to Dirty Jobs. That was submitted by Tinvec. That's going to be the title.
Dirty Jobs.
Somebody's got to do them.
Have you? Do you watch that? Have you watched that show? I just discovered that show on Netflix.
Dirty Jobs.
And that's not Dirty Jobs. No. Oh, it wasn't Dirty Jobs. Dirty Jobs was the old one. There's one called Dirty Money that I just discovered on Netflix.
Dirty Money.
Dirty Money.
A reality show, or? Yeah,
it's a reality show, and it's about guys that make their money. Like one guy's an eel fisherman in upstate New York. He's got like a special license to build this. I guess it's called a weir. It's like this ancient Indian. It's how the Indians used to do it. But the most fascinating guys for me on there are these guys that hunt ginseng in Arkansas.
Oh wow! Like wild ginseng.
And the money is unbelievable. He'll do a deal for like 40, 60 grand worth of ginseng.
How much does that weigh? Like
a couple pounds.
Wow. I'm in the
so
wrong.
How did the ginseng get wild? And has it always been endemic?
Wildly all over, and you have to get special licensing, and it is a business. It's like
is it an invasive species though, or is it something that has always grown there?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
That I don't know. I didn't research that part of it yet.
That's all right. I just didn't know if they went into it on the show.
That you can go out in the woods, dig up, and don't do this, people, because it is illegal. You need to get special licensing and.
Well, and that's weird that you can't just pick a plant out in the wild.
Well,
I understand it
because I think a lot of it is on parks and lands.
Oh, okay, that actually.
It is found in North America natively.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, but the pricing on it, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow.
So what if it grows on your own land, though? Just happens to.
Then it's not really wild, I guess, right?
It's semi-domesticated.
I don't know.
Like the raccoon that you leave the little bowl of milk for.
Now I'm imagining them like little wandering ginsengs that you have to pen up.
Wild ginsengs. Yeah, but it is funny because you've got all these like Japanese and Chinese and businessmen coming over to Arkansas to find this guy. He's like the guy.
Wow.
To get your ginseng from. So.
The ginseng whisperer.
Yeah. Anyway.
Who knows?
I'm fascinated by stuff like that, so I found that show. I was like, whoa, this is weird.
Yeah, I can see why. That is interesting.
Yeah, it's a couple guys in the Bay Area too that do burl hunting. You know, the burlwood.
Oh,
What's
yeah,
that?
yeah. It's
Burlwood.
What's burlwood?
So trees will get like a knot, like this bumpy kind of growth, and burlwood is like in high end like automobiles. You know, the dash with that. It's kind of got the little swirls and stuff like that. So if
Okay.
you have I don't have those kind of cars, so.
No, me either. But
But you
I've seen it imitated in plastic.
High-end Mercedes, yeah. People like to. So the real stuff is very expensive, and very hard to find and harvest and all that fun stuff. So.
And then they learn how to give trees cancer, so they disfigure themselves to grow more of that.
Yeah. Dirty Money is the show. I was fascinated by it just because it's like, it fascinates me to find out about all these little jobs that people do. You know, it's like, wow, you can make a lot of money doing that. Who knew?
Yeah, hunting ginseng.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. I probably should run and let you guys go. Thanks for having me on. I
Thanks
really,
again,
really
Adam.
appreciate it. Yep.
Have a good afternoon.
Now I got to figure out how to turn this off. I don't know. Do I hang up on you? I got it.
Yeah, you could just hit the little hang up button.
Yeah.
All
Talk
right,
to you guys
cheers.
later. Bye.
And I'm out of the post, Roger.
Awesome. Cool. Let's see.
So let me just check this. All right. Thank you, video watchers. We will see you tomorrow. Jenny Josephson will be back then, too.